which the 2013 film, which I love. And I think what it does a really good, I was researching some of this, and they actually went to a zombie specialist. So someone who knows all about the world. And so I was reading about what people thought about this, and these people loved it because it doesn't try to explain anything. In this world, you can be a zombie who can come back to life, even if you've been shot 40 times, or you become a bony that is just a mean sucker that'll wipe you out. So you hold on to some intelligence, like the people at the airport. You can listen to vinyl still when you're a zombie. You know, you can be brought back by love. You can woo people. You just gotta watch out for those bonies. Or you have the 28 days later, in air quote zombies, basically rage-infected things that can starve to death and will starve to death. But they spit blood, dude. A drop of blood from a crow dropping an eyeball lands in your eye. You're one of them. Almost immediately. It's a nightmare scenario. So I love Warm Bodies. But do you think that's more about a romance, I guess, between Teresa Palmer and Nicholas Hoult? And do you think, what are your thoughts on these two movies? Because I'm leaning 28 Days Later.
I'll start with Warm Bodies first. Warm Bodies, to me, it was a great movie, and I loved it. I want to preface my statement with that. It was a great movie. I loved it. It was fun to watch. All those things. Like, it was a good movie to watch and enjoy. But I felt like the whole zombie part of it, as far as they basically took Romeo and Juliet and they did it with humans and zombies, not competing families. And I love that. It was great. However, 28 Days Later, my ranking is in the top 2 of my favorite zombie movies.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you that the way that they shot that movie, as far as when they changed how they were shooting when the zombies were running and sprinting and attacking, and then you go to the more still and calm when it's a living person and they're unaffected by it yet. You were right when you said drop of blood in the eye. Almost, you got like 10 seconds. You're turning. The whole virus, the rage virus, to me, when we talk about which one of these zombie movies is most likely realistic, meaning that
hands down, right?
This is the one. I mean, because this is the one. They modeled the rage virus after Ebola, which causes that internal and external bleeding. And if you think about how viruses work, viruses want to spread. They actively want to branch out and spread. And I felt like 28 Days Later did a really good job with the horror zombie portion of it. But I read this, and I don't know if you actually knew this or not. Did you ever hear of the movie Triffids?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, Garland's he based it off of that, right?
Yeah. So he actually talks about how 28 Days Later was not really at the time intended to be a zombie movie, and that's how everybody viewed it because they saw it as like these humans going after other humans, but a lot of the inspiration from that came from the Day of the Triffids.
Wow.
You know, that's where a lot of it was. So I feel like 28 Days Later is a great zombie movie without zombies.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting is you could argue it both ways. So you and I are talking, right? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, listen, I was like, I get it's a rage virus, but it could fall under the zombie genre. I don't think I would be wrong. But your counter argument of just saying it's not really that, they're just infected with rage, it's a virus, so they're not zombies, you would be right too. So it's a weird argument. It's like Crazies, where the director, Breck Eisner, even George Romero didn't think that they were zombies. They were just infected with Trixie. And so then they started letting loose their most innermost kind of desires. They became murderous or childlike. So they didn't think they were zombies, but you could still lump it in with zombies. Does that make sense? Am I like...
No, and I agree 100% because, you know, when you think zombie apocalypse, except for Return of the Living Dead, which you were probably down to only maybe 100 zombies that were actually active at the time. 28 Days Later infected the entire country of England. Like, everybody got infected. You know, we're talking thousands and thousands. And when people think of zombie apocalypse, they don't think of 100 zombies. They think of thousands and millions of zombies throughout the United States. So I really like 28 Days Later, and I'm okay with calling it a zombie movie. It doesn't really have zombies in it.
Yeah, you're right. I'm glad we prefaced that. And Warm Bodies, it definitely has the zombies in it. And I appreciate that Warm Bodies did something new. I mean, Teresa Palmer was excellent. Nicholas Hoult was really good. I mean, I don't know. I like the different aspects of them. So you have, right? Don't you like how they have the bonies, and then you have the decent ones? They can kind of talk a little bit. He can says eat, eat, and they're trying to protect her. I mean, it's just, they're one of the few that can talk aside from the Return of the Living Dead. I also like how they can gain memories by eating brains. That's a crazy.
That was cool.
That's a crazy plot device. And so, all right, so this is tough for us, man, because we have a zombie movie without zombies, and then we have a movie based on a book that does an excellent job of just creating a different type. I mean, these are fictional fantasy creatures, so there's no hot and heavy rules. I mean, Romero didn't even have hot and heavy rules. They just kind of had a movie. So this is tough, man. Do we pick 28 Days Later, which is a great film, or Warm Bodies, which has a neat spin on zombies, a new mythos of zombies? I'm trying to talk myself out of this. This is tough.
Yeah, so what did you say about 28 Days Later? You would say that it's in your top 10 of movies of all time?
All time.
All time. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so there's 9 movies right there. So I can't put it in my top 10. But having said that, it is probably my 28 Days Later is probably tied for second with Dawn or just behind it. So I would be okay with putting 28 Days Later forward without actually having zombies in it.
All right, let's do it. Let's move it forward. Right. But we both want to say that Warm Bodies does a neat job with zombies.
Warm Bodies actually was one of those movies that you go and watch, and at the end you go, that was a really good movie.
Yeah, exactly. I own it. I love it. I like Rob Corddry in it. And I like at the end when they all team up. You got John Malkovich. Jeez Louise. Makes me happy. I almost shook, man. I almost gave it to Warm Bodies, but you got me on course. So we're going to stick with 28 Days Later, moving to the next round. Next.
Outstanding.
This one's tough too, but I think we'll come to the answer. Now, next we're going to have Train to Busan, right? I think one of the best, directed by Young Sang-ho. I mean, featuring Sang-hwa, one of my favorite action movie characters ever. I love how he just beats the daylights out of zombies. I mean, the guy is awesome. And he holds a zombie against that thing while they're pushing on him. The dude's just a brick. Love that dude. So you have Train to Busan, 2016 film, or Night of the Living Dead, 1968. Now, it would almost be sacrilege to move Train to Busan ahead of Night of the Living Dead. So, but what I will say is, what I like about... Now, let me ask you a question. Is the concept of Train to Busan better than the zombies? Because you have people on a speeding train and zombies on that train. It's a beautiful idea. So is the concept what makes the movie work, or is it the zombies that make the movie work, or is it the character? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Like, what is it about? Like, in what way could Train to Busan upset Night of the Living Dead, 1968, Romero's classic?
So one of the things that we had talked about when we talked about we're going to do this podcast was inspiration. Like, if you look at all of the other zombie horror or even comedies, if we got into even like Shaun of the Dead, which we'll talk about, but even that, I feel like everything really started from Night of the Living Dead. Yeah. The classic. And, I look back at it now and I'm going to say that if we have a zombie apocalypse, those are the zombies I want us to have, because I feel like the threat level was lower, they're slower, we can walk around them, we can get away from them. Train to Busan was much more 28 Days Later, much more like Dawn of the Dead remake. I really felt like when I watched Train to Busan, and I'm going to tell you that this was really close. When I watched Train to Busan, I really liked the characters. And I thought the characters were really well done in that. And no fault of its own, in Night of the Living Dead, you really only have like 5 characters that are being fleshed out during that movie. And I felt like Train to Busan, even if the actor that appeared in it only appeared for like a 2-minute scene, that actor was telling you a lot about, or that character in that movie was telling you a lot about their views on society, selflessness, whether they were a good person or a bad person was revealed with that. My pick is definitely going to be Night of the Living Dead because of what it is inspired.
And Dwayne Jones,
Also
too.
because Romero shot that on a budget that was unbelievably small.
Yeah.
Especially for today's standards. But did you know that it grossed over 263 times its budget?
It was one of the biggest independent films of all time. Insane.
Yeah. And when you think about, like, hey, if a movie studio was guaranteed to make 263 times its budget back on what they spent into the movie, who wouldn't want to have that under them and have, like, sell that movie to the public?
I mean, I just love it. Just, you know what I think made it big too is rated PG. So kids went and watched it. It's 68.
Yeah.
And so,
and I'll tell you that I watched it and I was way too young to watch it because I would have, like, reoccurring nightmares at night of zombies trying to break into the house and you're trying to board up the doors and then they get through the first line, so you run up the stairs and you close that door and they get to the second line and then you're hiding in your room and they're banging on the door and it's like, it's never going to end, they're just going to get me, it's only a matter of time, you know? So I really felt like on such a limited budget that was like, it was a masterpiece.
And Dwayne Jones's characterization as Ben in 68, that was groundbreaking. It was controversial. It was
huge.
And Romero, you know what I love about Romero is he's like, yeah, I just cast Dwayne Jones because he was the best actor. Right? There's no backslapping. He wasn't like, look at me, look what I was doing during, you know, the civil rights movement, the late 60s, all this kind of change. He's like, yeah, I liked him as an actor. And so I show it to my students and they love it, man. They love him. And I mean, Barbara has not aged well.
No.
Johnny! I mean, she has not aged well, but the movie characterization and what it's inspired has. So I will say, Train to Busan, I love the added wrinkle of they can't see when it's dark. It's a neat wrinkle. They just lose it. It's fun. And then I like, if they don't see you, they kind of become dormant. And also, why, if you're listening to this, so we did an episode about Train to Busan, and my wife Megan and I talked about it, where the Korean zombies, there's actually an MMA fighter called the Korean Zombie. He's a badass. But, I digress. But yeah, so I just love how committed they are. I think the Korean zombies are the best. Of all these zombies on here, all of them, Train to Busan has the most committed actors. And that's a big statement, but I'm telling you, man, the zombies in Train to Busan are perfect. I love them. I don't know what you think about that, though.
I found that movie, and it may not have been designed that way, but I found that movie fun.
Yeah.
And you know what made it fun for me was the characters in it that are trying to survive and the ways that they survive. Like, and one of the scenes that I watched it unfold in front of me and my eyes started widening and I was like, what the crap, was when they get put in the cart. You know, they go through the crowd of survivors, they get put in the cart, and one of the survivors sees through the thing and starts to see the zombies on the other side and walks down. And as she's getting closer to the door, a guy's yelling, "What are you doing? Get away from the door! Stop her!" And then she opens it and they flood. So all these survivors were like, we're safe. And while they were paying attention to the survivors that made their way into the next car, somebody went down and opened that door. And that's just classic horror. You know what I mean? Like that. I love it when people have been pushed to the edge and they make a decision that everybody in the theater goes, no, why are you doing that? Like, why would you open that door? But it happens. You know, that was probably one of my favorite, like, from that point on, for me, was really good.
All right, so we love Train to Busan, but we're giving the round to Night of the Living Dead.
Only if you agree with that.
I agree with that, 100%. I couldn't do any
Yeah,
other thing.
I agree with that. I think Night of the Living Dead should move forward.
All right, so we got that moving forward. Now, we have Return of the Living Dead versus Shaun of the Dead. Edgar Wright's film that, I mean, Shaun of the Dead was just a kick in the pants of the zombie genre. I mean, it wasn't a massive blockbuster, the 2004 film directed by Edgar Wright, who's one of my favorite directors. I have this Mondo poster behind me at The World's End. Love this guy. But for me, this movie, right, the zombies do show some intelligence. When Bill Nighy becomes a zombie, he hates the music. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, and so they have some intelligence to them. You can domesticate them with shopping carts. You can play video games with them, so there's intelligence there. But I think the movie's more about like people becoming zombies on their phones, everyday zombies, and then just going to the pub every day, solving your problems. A man-child becoming a man. So I think The zombies are excellent in it, but